Hello and welcome to Mindshifters Radio. Today is Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And as always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever discovered, encountered, been introduced to in my 47 years of doing therapy. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go there and click on the red and white bullseye or the link in the upper left-hand corner that says Start Here, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? That chapter of that book contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 17 years to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships and to turn any negative emotional experience into part of the infallible guidance system that each one of us has been given. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have either been stepped through that worksheet process and or they've given powerful testimonials about how the application of that tool in their life has actually changed their life for the better. You can also go to your app store and type in the 3 words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness and thereby get access to a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do that soon and often because that frequently leads to comments, questions, testimonials, refutations, soliloquies, etc. And if you have any of those, you can give us a call at 563-999-3581. And when you call that number and press 1, it will put a question mark by your phone number, and I'll announce you by your area code, and we'd love to have you do that. We're also working through the Course in Miracles workbook lessons this year. Today is the 265th day of the year, and today's lesson reads, Creation's gentleness is all I see. Commentary reads, I have misunderstood the world because I laid my sins on it and then saw them looking back at me. How fierce they seemed, and how deceived I was to think that what I feared was in the world instead of in my mind alone. Today I see the world in the celestial gentleness with which creation shines. There is no fear in it. Let no appearance of my sins obscure the light of heaven shining on the world. What is reflected there is in creation's mind. The images I see reflect my thoughts. Yet is my mind at one with God's, and so I can perceive creation's gentleness. In quiet I would look upon the world, which but reflects your thoughts, and mine as well. Let me remember that they are the same, and I will see creation's gentleness. Pam Grout, in her Course in Miracles experiment book, Lesson 265, titles it, Today would be a really good day to forgive somebody, Part 2. And she quotes James Baldwin, who said, The conquest of the physical world is not man's only duty. He is also enjoined to conquer the great wilderness of himself. Pam writes, For about a year, I have nursed a grudge against someone who holds a lot of cards in my life. Despite my big talk about working the Course, I viewed this, quote, horrible ogre as the one possible exception to the Course's request to forgive. In this person's case, I felt so justified in hanging on to my story. He really is an unreasonable prig, He really is boring and mean. And OMG, it's just so unfair that I have to endure him every time I want to see this other very special person in my life. My sister and I have spent hours dissecting all the reasons that this person prevents us from really being there for someone we love. After hours of avoiding the inevitable, the voice of the Holy Spirit finally tugged on my pants leg. "Pam," it said, "I've had about enough of this. You are not anything but a poser. How dare you write a book about a practice that you're not faithfully practicing?" Well, I didn't like hearing that, but I decided to take lesson 265, Creation's Gentleness is All I See, and take it at its word. I decided to concede that maybe, probably not, but maybe, I misunderstood this person. Maybe I deceived myself. Maybe these judgments are only in my mind. My ego stood resolute, but I was able to give a teensy tiny kernel of willingness. Funny thing, not 30 minutes after throwing up my hands in defeat, this person who hasn't contacted me in a year, quote, even when my very special person was hospitalized, close quotes, sent me a text. We are living in an energetic universe. And when I change my energy, it definitely affects the other people in this universe. So 30 minutes after she gave up her hatred and her bitterness and resentment, or at least softened to the point where she allowed that it might be all in her mind, 30 minutes later, this person who hadn't contacted her in over a year contacted her. So that's our Course in Miracles workbook lesson for today and our Pam Grout commentary. And we have, as usual, about 15 minutes left to talk. Our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And if you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. What is on your mind? What would be useful for you? How could we be of service to you today by the topic we choose, or helping you work through a worksheet, or helping you understand what a worksheet is and how it can be a powerful tool in your life? Any and all of these topics would be good for us to explore. And if any of them seems more useful than another to you, we would appreciate hearing that, and we'll focus on that for the rest of our time. We had a support group last night, and in that support group we listened to the explanation of and deep dive into the third line of what's called the Lord's Prayer, but from the ancient Aramaic, so that it is quite a bit different than the King James Version of the Bible English that most people have been exposed to. And it truly is just a meditative experience about opening up to all that life has to offer and being part of this miracle of creation that is the truth of our lives. And then we had some discussion, and we had some discussion about creativity, and we had discussion about language. And we talked about Jacob Collier and his tremendous creativity musically, among other things. And if you haven't tapped into it and you want to enjoy some musical creativity, check out Jacob Collier, Collier, at MIT. Check that out on YouTube, and you won't be disappointed. So, lots of other things are going on, and I can talk forever, but it would be more beneficial if somebody raised a hand and said, "Here, talk about this," or "I have a question about this," or "I'm struggling with that." 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. Yesterday we were talking about some of the concepts in Richard Moss's book, and and the way he talks about being in the presence moment. The book is Inside Out Healing. And topics in his book include awakening to the power of present moment awareness and understanding the ego's game and causality and creating your own reality. And as we were discussing yesterday, he talks about how in the book, trying to understand the ego's game, this is not attacking my ego. This is not labeling my ego as bad or wrong. This is just understanding that part of my consciousness, that part of my awareness and language formation. He talks about the trap of thinking that I am special, is his word for it, but either better or worse than somebody else. And that the ego has literally created its awareness and its sense of identity by manufacturing the experience, the perception, around at enough different things, you find, that's not really the case. There are other people who do this, just follow the person and just let their energies guide you and don't do anything once you get there. I choose, as often as I can remind myself to do it, to focus on the good, to look for that positive filter, grandiose or the depressive identification of specialness. Because when you come back and realize that we're all the same and you're back in balance, then your perception gets restored. His idea is to give us a choice between being driven by the ego or being aware of its game plan. And the awareness of the game plan frees you from its negative effects, beginning immediately, but then over time it deepens and strengthens. He says, one of the ways that you can know that you're being aware rather than being hijacked by your ego is that when you realize you have fallen into that pattern of specialness, either thinking you are better or worse than another person, you thank yourself for noticing it. You don't busy yourself with beating yourself up. You step right into thanking yourself for the awareness of the process. Rewarding yourself for the awareness is a new idea for most people, he says. But try it. When you catch yourself pulling what your ego would tell you is such a bonehead move, and that's not very highly spiritual of me, and I screwed up again. When you catch those kinds of thoughts, say thank you. Say yes to the awareness, and yes to being, the way I like to talk about it, is being gentle with myself. Part of this is realizing that my ego, my identification with a sense of self, a certain label, good, bad, or otherwise, is what lots of different spiritual traditions talk about in different ways. Guy Finley calls it a mechanical level of consciousness. It's a thought pattern that just spins every time it gets stirred up, or in Michael Ryce's words, resonated. And my ego doesn't understand that it's causing me pain by focusing on negative thoughts and beliefs about me. And so it just keeps doing it. Guy Finley says, the mind doesn't stop when you tell it to stop. The only way, the only time, the only pattern of consequence or circumstance in which the mind stops is when the mind finally realizes that it is the source of its by life is nowhere near as important as how I choose to interpret and respond to those events is when I argue for my negative thought or emotion.
Oh, that's great.
Will their ego or destroy their ego or do away with their ego or tame their ego? And I think about the Chinese finger trap. I don't know if anybody's seen those. I'm of an age where we used to have these as little party gifts several times a year, and it was a woven kind of a reed, kind of a strong tall grass that was woven into a tube, and you would push your fingers in each end of the tube, and then when you tried to pull it out, the weaving would tighten around your fingers, and you'd be trapped unless you knew the key, the magic solution. But the more you pull, the tighter the weave gets, and the more you're trapped. The more you resist, the more you're trapped. Well, that's essentially just like trying to kill your ego. The more you try to kill your ego, the stronger your ego gets. How could that be? Well, because the you that wants to kill anything is part of ego. We've talked about it before. One of my favorite books was The Mirror Theory, and in it, at one point, Betsy says to her teacher, "I hate the ego, Charlie." And Charlie, the teacher, says, "Well, then ego has won." And Betsy says, "What are you talking about? I told you I hate ego." And Charlie says, "Well, Betsy, ego doesn't care who you hate. It just wants to make sure you hate. And even if you're hating the ego gets strengthened. And the part of you that wants to destroy your ego is the ego." What these books, like the Richard Moss book and so many others, are pointing us to is that if we step back and observe the process, in acceptance, in allowance, in surrender, we drop the resistance, we drop the labeling, we drop the comparison, we drop the grandiosity and the depressive nature of our thought patterns, and we just watch our thought patterns with that kind of childlike curiosity. Oh, that's interesting. Look what I'm doing there. That's when the effects of the ego fall away, and then we have the liberty to choose differently. At the end of that chapter, he says, the process of awakening into greater awareness and presence is sometimes referred to as the death of the ego. In fact, many spiritual teachings talk about killing the ego, but indeed, when I do that, I'm not developing a higher degree of presence. I'm engaging in the battlefield, in the tug of war, in the resistance, in the hatred. So what I want to do is get more aware of the process. And the more aware I become of the process and the fullness of my awareness and its potential to step into and then outside of the ego, that's when it loses its power over me. So, 563-999-3581. Thoughts about ego, thoughts about awareness, thoughts about your role in either being present in the moment so that you can use the tool of ego as opposed to being ruled by it. Susan, welcome.
Hi, I just got a call from Mira Rubin. Are you willing to give a hint about how your interview went?
Say that again. I just turned the volume up. You got a call from who?
Mira Rubin.
Yes.
Who said she enjoyed being interviewed by you very much. And I don't know if it's appropriate if I ask how it went, and could you tell us when the air date is?
Well, it just got recorded today. When the air date is going to depend on a variety of factors, including how quickly she can get me her headshot and bio, which I've requested. Currently, I think if she gets it to me, it might be posted or published on October 12th.
Okay.
And, depending upon how many people clamor for it, it might even be run as a Mind Shifters radio show even before then. You never know. We have all kinds of possibilities.
All right. Good.
Currently, I have yesterday was posted the Dr. Joquita Handy, Every Child is Brilliant, Helping Children with Autism and Other Learning Disabilities. And then next week we have Morgan Beard, a music therapist, a young music therapist who's a lived experience with mental health challenges. And then on the 5th we have Dr. Patrick Porter, who created the Brain Tap device and helps people heal their brain with light and sound. And if all goes well, the Mira Rubin episode would be on the 12th of October.
Wow, you've been cooking. That's a lot.
Well, it's one of those deals where when people want something every week, and if you just think, I'll do one every week, then if you have something come up like the interview that was supposed to be done this Friday, I just got a notice yesterday that the gentleman's wife is ill, and he's going to have to be tending her when she comes home from the hospital, so he can't do the interview. So if I was if I wasn't getting a backlog, then every time somebody had a glitch, we wouldn't have a podcast. So I try to have, 4 or 5 or 6 of them recorded and ready to go in case something comes up.
Wow.
Which is quite the challenge sometimes because life happens. Yeah. So how are you? We haven't heard from you in a couple days.
Well, things are calming down and blowing up at the same time. I mean, we've had an influx of refugees here, and we ran an enormous. It was like a yard sale, but we weren't charging anything for it. And we've spent about 6 weeks gathering donations from all over the place to my church basement, and we could do it out of the basement, which is the refugee community center there. Because we've been closed down, we used it for this giveaway, and the intention was to let the refugees come in and take what they needed. We didn't charge anybody anything, not even the regular people who came. We asked for donations, and we made about $850, which was pretty modest, but I was surprised anyway. But we did have some refugees come and go off with armloads of bedding and pillows and pots and pans, and it was really, really heartening to see. And I've met one wonderful new refugee, a woman from Iraq, who is in her 40s and fluent in English, so she may get a job as a translator very soon. Wonderful woman, and with 2 teenage sons. She told me she had been through 4 wars, but the worst war for her was within her own marriage. It turned out that the husband wasn't well, and it was a very abusive situation. So she fled Iraq to Turkey. And she wanted to come here, but she could only get as far as Turkey. And she lived in Turkey for 8 years before she got here with her now teenage boys. And they are living in a house because we have a refugee service that places people, gets them settled, pays them enough to live on until they get a job, and there's a cutoff date of 3 months. So we've been working with her. And you're going to laugh, Dr. Tim, she's a belly dancer. And she's going to come and be a guest teacher on one of my Pilates classes. I think my students are going to be blown away. But anyway, there's that. And then Tim and I are taking in a Sudanese woman who's coming in about 10 days to live with us for 6 to 9 months until they find housing for her, because housing is terrible here. It's probably terrible everywhere. A single bedroom, 1-bedroom apartment costs $1,200, and the Refugee Services doesn't have that kind of money, so they're asking families to take in people, and we're taking in this woman. So I've been doing worksheets about, having a whole new life here, and I can't imagine what it must be like for them. Michael was talking with me about it yesterday, and he said you just can't imagine the trauma they've been through. So, and we don't think this woman speaks English, so it's going to be interesting. But anyway, that's why I've been gone missing in action. But things have settled down, and we've deposited all the remaining stuff to Salvation Army and another organization, and we're getting back to normal for a minute anyway. But so you got the long answer to how you've been doing. A lot
You've
going
been
on.
busy. Yeah, you've been busy.
Yeah. So the lesson today, creation's gentleness, is all I see. And I would love to just talk about that, or not talk about it, but hear you interpret that in the light of the fact that, for instance, yesterday I saw an owl take a dive into grass near the highway, and I think she died there. That wasn't a gentle thing to see, but there's death all over the place and wars all over the place. So I know we have to adjust our students.
Okay, so here's my take on it. You just gave us, as you talked about what's been going on for you, you just gave us a way to see the loving, creative, gentle side of life, even in the face of these people who have been refugees from wars and are, they're running from the traumas in their world. But where they run to is into the arms and hands and hearts of people like you and those at your church. So there's always, everything is this ebb and flow. There's always the give and take. There's always going to be what people call evil and bad, because our minds work that way. But it's really just the flow of life. And the truth of it is, there's always many, many, many times, perhaps millions, perhaps trillions of times more good going on the planet than there is bad. Always. And the choice is, what are we going to look at? And that's what the lesson for today calls us to. What eyes are we going to look at this with? It says, I have misunderstood the world because I laid my errant energy upon it, my interpretations, my fears, my sadness, my pain, my sins on it. And then I saw all that garbage that I put on it staring back at me. So what do I look at? Do I look at the fact that we aren't, everyone in this moment, acting according to our true nature? Or do I look at how many people are waking up to their true nature? How many people, even in moments of strife and struggle, look for the helpers, become the helpers, support those in need, etc. I had this this pattern I've been talking to people about for a long time. When you hear of something like the Sandy Hill shooting or the Twin Towers coming down or whatever, what do you want to focus on? The fact that one or two people did this violent thing driven by their own pain and fear and sadness? Or do you want to look at the hundreds of thousands and millions of people that rush in to help? Right? There's a gentleman who wrote the book Brain Spotting, and he talks about how he donated his time and he trained other therapists, and they helped people with trauma from the Twin Towers, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours that they're just donating their time to help these people. Do you look at that, or do you look at the one or two people that wanted to create this mess? Same thing with the Sandy Hill shooting. So one person gets a gun, goes out and does all of this violence. Do we focus on that, or do we focus on, look at how many people sent prayers, money, emotional comfort, therapists donated their time and flocked there to help the people with trauma, with the immediate responders. And so what do you want to focus on? That, to me, today's lesson is calling us to that. Because there's always the Creator's view, which is everything in its wholeness, everything always expanding. The sun's going to come up tomorrow. We just hit the equal time in our northern hemisphere for daylight and darkness, but we still have plants growing. We still have people who are looking to harvest, their melons and their tomatoes, and all of this is still going. What are you going to focus on? The breath of life that's moving through you and the heartbeat in you that is the miracle that it is, and the way that people are so blessed to have you and the others in that church welcome them when they are refugees. What do you focus on?
That's
today's
good,
lesson. Go ahead. That's good because the lesson what?
I didn't really read it right. Creation's gentleness is all I see. It didn't say is all there is.
Yes, now you're getting it.
Okay.
The images that I see reflect my thoughts. And yet, my mind is connected to the Creator's mind, so I could choose to focus differently. And remember this thing that I have typed out that I hand to people in my sessions because they say, wait a minute, that's confusing, that's difficult.
Right.
Okay, well, two things. You have the infinite capacity to choose the focus of your conscious awareness in each moment, and it's the focus of your conscious awareness in each moment that actually creates your experience of life. So are you going to create an experience of sadness and trauma and upset because you're interacting with these refugees? And if you do that, how are you going to help them? Are you going to open yourself to the miracle of life and the blessing of the opportunity to share with them and to help them? And here's this woman who speaks fluent English, who's a belly dancer, who's probably got all kinds of other skills that you're going to have. Your life is going to be changed because you had access to her, and her life's going to be changed for the better because she's had access to you. Are you going to focus on that? Or are you going to focus on, this sad trauma about this and that, which, by the way, you don't have any ability to change. You do have the ability to change your experience in this moment and that person's experience in this moment, and that's where this lesson and all of the work I do with people would direct your attention.
This is so interesting, and I'm going to steer us. I have a question, and it may be going too far off track, but yesterday I was driving with my grandson who has his permit, so he's the one that's driving, and I'm just the responsible adult in the car with a license. And I had been feeling sort of ill in my stomach. My stomach seems to tell me, in other words, what my thoughts are, even though I'm not aware of my thoughts. And Ellen was telling us about it by Sat Prem called The Mind of the Cells, and I've just ordered it. I found a used copy, thank goodness, because it's very expensive. But I'm curious about the fact that I can be feeling really not well, and I know it's my thoughts, but I don't know what my thoughts really are, or they may be like that owl took a dive and probably died in the grass, and I was feeling it. All of my fears have been stirred up. They've been stirred up about taking this Sudanese woman home. But it starts with a feeling in my gut, and then I have to say, what's going on here? Can I put a word to this sick feeling in my stomach? And then I can, and then the stomach stuff goes away. So I don't know exactly where I'm going.
To remember my true nature and then take an action from that. That's that definition of faith from the ancient Aramaic, right? To act from the rooted center of your being, to get consciously aware of your true nature as this force for love and creation, and then take an action. And the second prong of that approach is I acknowledge when my stomach is in a knot. I acknowledge when I get a twitch in my neck. I acknowledge when there's a stabbing pain in my low back, and I don't think, oh, I better get to the doctor. I think, oh, what is this trying to tell me? And I work with it. And I understand that the unconscious, or the part of my consciousness that I'm not willing to look at easily, holds useful information for me and is often the key to my physical comfort or discomfort. And so I use the tools to dismantle what might be there that's outside my conscious awareness, but it's making itself known, right, through the energy system that we call the mind and the body. It's making me aware that something's off the mark.
Yeah.
So I pick up a tool. If I'm in a situation like that with you, and I'm in a car with somebody, and I start to feel that sick feeling in my stomach, I start doing EFT tapping. I start asking to be shown. Some people might call it a prayer. And I work with what is up in the moment and bring my awareness to it, the way Richard Moss is talking about. I bring the presence moment awareness to it, and I use some of the tools that I've been given. Keep the energy moving.
It takes a while sometimes. Yeah. I couldn't get much traction for a while, but it did dissipate, and it dissipates a lot faster. I started tapping, actually, in the car. I just started tapping my legs because my grandson wouldn't even really notice that. I didn't want to do anything totally weird, but breathing and tapping.
Well, you know, to truly heal, you're going to have to be willing to do some really totally weird stuff eventually. In a society as sick and crazy as ours, if all you want to do is the stuff that's not weird, you're going to limit your ability to heal and integrate.
I totally agree. Tim Bingham and I were just on our Zoom call, and we were talking to Ellen about the mind of the cells and life without death and Mother's Agenda and this Sat Prem guy. And Tim looks at me and he says, do you know what she's talking about? And I said, my mind is coming close to it. I'm excited about it. I've got this feeling about it. Yeah. And he said, you're becoming extremely weird. So we're going to have to deal with the weirdness factor in the house, definitely. But Dr. Tim, I have another question. I just read something that Guy Finley put out, and I have a hard time deciphering the way he words things, whether he's speaking or writing. So I wondered if it would be okay, this is related, if I could read you 2 short paragraphs that he wrote in a recent webinar, recent webinar. Okay, part 1. What power has any painful moment over us, save for having become unconsciously identified with our own negative reaction to it?
Okay, so
this
stop
is just
right
what we've
there.
been talking about.
So stop right there.
Yeah.
What power does any negative reaction have over us, except for our identification with it? Right. Read it again, please.
What power has any painful moment over us, save for having become unconsciously identified with our own negative reaction to it?
Okay, so here's the point. Humility, right? Acceptance and allowance and surrender to whatever happens in life. And when I'm not allowing and surrendering to what happens in life, I'm feeling the tension that comes from the resistance, and then I identify with that tension. I say, I'm angry. I am anger. I am so angry. I am so scared. And I identify with that rather than doing that. Step back, take a breath, allow, accept. This is energy moving through my system. This moment does not define me or my life. But if I identify with it, and if I think I need to fight against it, the first thing is I create the upset that I experience. The next thing is I think I'm right because I say this thing is wrong, and I set myself up as being, opposite of what's wrong, so therefore I'm right. But if I take a breath and I say, wow, this isn't how I expected my day to go. I wonder how this is going to turn out better than I could have imagined. I wonder how this is going to lead to a lesson I need to learn to move forward. I wonder how this is going to hold blessings for me that I can't even see from my current position. If I do that, I have an entirely different experience of the moment. And the moment, therefore, and this thing that I label negative, has no power over me if I don't label it negative. And it has even, less impact on me when my resistance to it, when I notice that resistance, I catch it. Take that breath we talk about where I hold the energy at the top and then slowly exhale down, and I turn the focus inside myself. Now I'm not focusing on the outside event and what I don't want to have happen and how I know I'm right and the world is wrong. Now I'm focusing on what's the part of me that's creating the upset, and I'm softening and breathing and asking to be shown how I'm creating the negative emotion, or what's the interpretation I've placed on this event that's generating this pain or fear or sadness, and then it moves through me infinitely faster than when I tighten and resist it.
I can feel that. Yeah. Guy Finley goes on to say, seen properly, this means the event we blame for our suffering is like looking in a mirror and blaming the reflection for whatever we don't want to see in it.
Exactly.
That's pretty much what you were saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I only have a negative experience when I resist the flow of life. Go ahead. What does he say then?
It's just one more sentence, and then I won't read the rest. Part 2, he says, our willingness and the inner work it takes, what you were just talking about, to be aware of the hopelessness in any negative reaction is the first step in transforming its innate futility into a new, true, and higher destiny. I love that. If you have anything negative, it's hopeless. It's just not it's a dead end.
It came to me a few years ago to say, my definition for being stuck is when I'm experiencing a negative thought or a negative emotion. My definition for being hopelessly stuck.
You know what? You should do a couple of little earbud podcasts that are like 30 seconds long and have us buy them, and we'll stick them in our ear when we're suddenly triggered. We just we listen to a nano podcast by Tim Hayes. Instant straightening out. No, that was good. So anyway, yeah. Good. Well, that's about what I was going to ask you about. And
so one of the things that comes up with Guy Finley's writing is it's very similar to some of the stuff in the Course in Miracles, where it starts talking about, the negatives and the double negatives.
Right.
And,
I know.
And so it requires, slowing down, and for me, it requires my slowing down and parsing out, okay, what's it really saying here? And you can hear it sometimes if you're reading along in the lesson with me, that I make those course corrections sometimes on the fly. And I change the wording. I change the wording so that it doesn't say, I can't but see this or that or this or that. And when I'm doing that or that, how can I not help but do this or that? And it's all the negatives. And so I I work to straighten it out, and I have to do the same thing with a lot of Guy Finley's presentations because he's such a fluent writer and speaker, and he has these, 2 and 3 paragraph long sentences.
Mhm. It's amazing.
But you'll find the very same message from Course in Miracles, Way of Mastery, Michael Ryce's talks. You'll find the very same thing in Guy Finley's talks, because they're excellent observers, and they're all observing the same thing. They're observing our life. They're observing our process of thought.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Tim, he did write some more. Do you want me to read more, or do you want to take another caller, or what?
Well, nobody else has their hand up, so what's your next question?
Well, it isn't a question. I was just going to keep reading on this, what he does, which is very good. His podcasts, his webinars are so late at night that I don't listen to them live. And then I often don't even listen to the playback because he writes a summary. And I find his summaries are really useful, and I can do them.
His special writings, His special writings for the talk.
Yeah, right. I wonder if those are, do you happen to know whether he writes those ahead of the webinar or he does a summary of afterward?
Well, I don't know if he ever does them afterwards, but he usually comes into each talk with a special writing, and sometimes he wrote that special writing a week or two before the talk, and he gets another one that comes right before the talk, sometimes minutes before. So there'll be another one tucked in the middle of the presentation.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Amazing. Well, he says when a wave...
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to start reading again, so talk. Yeah, say.
Well, let's have you read. I was just going to mention that he has that book about relationship magic, and he's been doing some talks on that and promoting those. And what you just read sounds like part of that book, Relationship Magic.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't gotten that book. Okay, so I'll read a little bit and see what happens. When a wave of negative reactions comes along, something in us that believes itself to be apart from the wave steps in and tries to mitigate or resolve it, and this never works. As long as we run into the wave, try to fight with it, change its direction, or evaporate the ocean, there's only one possibility. What's the possibility? The continuity of conflict. That's the only possibility there is. The reaction actually drives the situation deeper and strengthens the idea that, quote, I really don't want to be an unhappy person. I really don't want to worry, but I just have to. That's so cool, end quote. We have to realize
he had a window into your mind, didn't he, when he wrote that?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. I don't think we need to go any further. It's getting embarrassing. But
it's all of us, right? It's all of us.
Yeah.
It's the same process for everyone. We create our negativity. Life is just this flow of energy. If you listen to that Michael Singer presentation, if you read his 2 books, life is a flow of energy. In that one 8-hour class he did, he said he spent a whole hour talking about the best our scientists can determine that what we call the physical universe began 13.84 billion years ago. And it's been unfolding in a creative process ever since, and everything you see, every person you see, every object you touch, the ground you're walking on is composed of atoms that were born in these explosions 13.4 billion years ago.
Whoa.
And it's been a part of this flow of creation, just like what is inevitably going to happen when I, plant the seed in the ground and it gets the proper soil nutrients, water, and sunlight. It's going to become the plant that is contained within the seed. The blueprint blueprint for it is contained. So what's going to unfold in my life in this next day, week, hour, month, year is the part of that extension of creation. And I've got this mind that sometimes forgets to zip up my pants zipper, and it wants to judge what's unfolding and say, that's bad, that's wrong, that shouldn't happen.
God, may we remember this.
And in
sessions with somebody else, I haven't been in, is this okay? And I went through all that and then decided.
Susan, does that mean we have to break up?
Yeah. I really thought I'd have to confess. I thought I'd have to confess that I'm working with this person. And I feared that you or Michael might think that, what, we're chopped liver now? I mean, what's the deal? I went through all this. It's crazy.
That's good. That's good.
So, yeah, that's good. So,
what about the session that you want to ask?
I don't even know how to ask it. It was just what she did, which was to stay absolutely glued to what I was saying, and I was glued to allowing my mind to go wherever it was going to go, no matter how insane, which is exactly the pattern that you recommend doing in the worksheet. But she stayed in there in a way that I don't. I'm going to now, I hope, but she stayed there and pushed gently. It was like sinking into slime, that slime stuff that kids play with, just kept reshaping and pushing and reshaping and pushing, and my mind was showing me things that I haven't thought of ever, and bringing in things that they weren't foreign, but they were new. And at the end of it, I can't tell you, we didn't come to an enlightened goal. I guess that's it. We didn't come to an enlightened goal. We just stopped, came to a stopping place and stopped, and I felt different. But I couldn't tell you any kind of enlightened goal, but I'm a different person. I've had 2 sessions with her, and I feel so much more empowered, so much healthier. Knock on wood, I'm afraid this is going to come and bite me in the behind because I'm, tempting the fates and saying this. I felt changed by it. And I felt as if what she was doing is...
So he uses the strength and the loving support of the people in the group to stay with it better when he's doing a worksheet out loud in the group. And that's what's happening when you're with someone like Mira.
Yeah.
At least that's one way to think about it. So we've reached the end of the time. So thank you again for comments, questions, the Guy Finley stuff, all of that. I will mute you and let you hang on for the second hour, and if you so desire, I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Welcome, Jeannie Ryce.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. I appreciate it. Good show.
All right, have a great show.
Thank you.